Okay, it looks like we are live. Oh, Cheryl's already in, Jeremy. She said, "Woo, let's
Already here.
go." Love it. I think Cheryl's our biggest fan.
She
Hello,
is
Cheryl. How you doing?
best supporter.
She is. Cheryl's awesome. We love Cheryl. All
We
right.
do.
So, hey everybody, welcome to the other side of the die, where we talk about how you can have more fun and less drama at your gaming table. And before we came online here, I was just remarking to Jeremy that I have no idea why I list out and spell our socials for you guys because they're on the screen. You can read them for yourselves. So they're going to be there the entire stream. So just write them down and send us some tweets at our Twitter handles. You can send us emails. And I just want to thank everybody for joining the stream or watching this on YouTube, whichever one you are doing. So, my name is Paul Postal, and I am joined by.
Jeremy Kimberlin.
All
Nice
right,
to meet you.
all right, Jeremy.
Everybody else who's here.
Yeah, I thought you were talking to me there for a minute.
No, we know each other.
How was the Mother's Day today, Jeremy? What'd you do for your wife?
We went to the Cheesecake Factory. It was they were the line was an hour and a half, and my 5-year-old
Wow.
said, "This is the worst place we've ever gone to." And then he got his food, and he's like, "All right, this was worth it." So
It was worth the
high
hour and a
praise.
half.
That's what he said after he got his food. I think he was
Okay.
just really hungry, though.
Yeah, so my we woke up this morning. Not that you asked what we did, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
What did
but
you do? Yeah.
yeah. So woke up this morning and my daughter had special ordered a book for my wife that she was able to customize a little bit, and it basically talked about what my wife is to my daughter, how much my daughter loves my wife. She's a superhero, she's a princess, and it was sweet and just made my wife's day and started
Nice.
Mother's Day off nice. So we went to church this morning, and then we were going to go to Connie House for hibachi, but then they weren't going to open up for another 30 minutes, and we were all getting hungry. So my wife said, "Let's just go to Atlanta Bread Company." So we went to Atlanta Bread Company. Do they have
Eh,
Atlanta bread companies where you live, Jeremy?
Nope.
I guess it's just in the name. I guess it's just an Atlanta thing. Now that I told
Nope.
everybody where I live.
Now they can hunt you down. All right.
Exactly. So
So what are we talking about this week, Paul?
we are talking about that is a great. Oh, we are talking about no, you cannot do whatever you want in D&D or your tabletop role playing game of choice. And we have a couple of different I guess you could say, Jeremy, main headings
Yeah.
when it comes to this. So the first one is, I think, Jeremy, you named this heading we were planning for this session was fantasy games or any tabletop role playing game with common sense. You want to elaborate on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So we'll kind of go into it where it's basically just going to go into, if you're wearing full plate mail, you can't climb a wall as easily as if you're not wearing it.
Right.
Just a whole bunch of things that would basically be common sense, even in a magical world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what one of the things that you said when we were getting ready for this that I thought was awesome was skill checks are not magical. Now, of course, I got the D&D logo behind me because my tabletop role playing game of choice is Dungeons and Dragons. But I thought that was awesome the way you said that because it makes perfect sense. For example, I've read on social media a bunch of times where DMs are talking about my player is upset because even though they rolled a 20, a nat 20, or they rolled a 23 or 24 or whatever on their persuasion check, that they're not able to do. They weren't able to convince whatever NPC to, do exactly what they wanted them to do. And we all know the extreme cliches like, no, you can't convince a king to give you his kingdom. No, you can't
Yeah.
convince a dragon to give you all its treasure. Because, like we've talked about, I mean, persuasion is not mind control.
Yeah. And it's always really frustrating when you get a player who thinks that that's the way a skill, because I totally get it. If you cast a spell charm person,
Right.
now we're talking about where these things could actually happen. But if you're just trying to if you're trying to tell the king, yes, give me your kingdom, why just talking with somebody would that ever happen?
Right.
So you kind of got to bring in the common sense. Yes, we're in a magical world. Magic can do a lot of the things that you're wanting to do, but if you're not doing magic, then no, it's going to fall back into the common sense area.
And I think where this falls into Jeremy with that is, I think it really depends on the type of player. You got players who are just all into the mechanics. They just want to do a hack and slash game, and
Yeah.
they just want to roll dice and think they should be able to do whatever they want based on the dice rolls. But for role players, I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this because this just actually came to me. We didn't talk about this when we were planning for this session, but for role players, it's all about when you're meeting NPCs, it's all about building relationships with them first, right? Because you have to do that in real
Mhm.
life. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to build a relationship with somebody. You can't just meet somebody in real life and then convince them to do whatever you want. Like you can't, going back to our
It's
single days.
very, very hard to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like I was gonna say, like going back to our single days, you can't just meet a girl, and then immediately expect her to go on a date with you. I mean, unless you're really, 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 really charming. And I've never been able to do that, and I don't know a lot of guys who are able to do that. I mean, you have to build some kind of relationship first before you can convince somebody to do something, that you want them to do.
Yeah. No, and yeah, you got to build that rapport with somebody before you can really
Right.
start to do some of the stuff that in my game currently there's
Hmm.
we were kind of talking about this, how there's a secret society in my city, and the players, one of the members of the secret society, which are typically like top level people of different guilds and societies inside of the city, one of them asked them this code phrase, and
Hmm.
the player realized that he was being asked a code phrase, but he didn't know, like he doesn't know the response. And so he goes, can I roll something to see if I know what this is? And I'm like, it's a code, you either know it or you don't.
Right.
I was like, do you know it? And he's like, no. Then I was like, what, you could roll whatever you wanted, but the answer is you don't
Right.
know.
Right.
uh
Exactly.
and the thing is as they build rapport inside of the city, the secret society is going to notice that, and somebody is going to give them the return phrase so they can start interacting with these other members more.
Yeah, I mean, so it makes me think of, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because, as I talked about last stream, my wife and I recently celebrated our wedding anniversary. And the hotel we stayed at had a speakeasy underneath it. And you actually had to, I mean, play like it was a speakeasy, like back there in Prohibition. You had to go up to this old timey phone and you picked it up and it rang. Somebody answered. And the passphrase was, I'm here to pick up my alterations because the front for this, fake speakeasy was a clothier.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I mean, think about back during Prohibition. It's not like you could just learn about a speakeasy and then just walk up and they're going to let you in. You had to
Yeah.
build relationships first in order
Yeah.
to get the phrase for
Had to
them to
prove you
let
weren't
you
a
in.
cop.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's a great point. What's different in a fantasy game that if you have a secret society like, a thieves guild or something like that, yeah, they got to make sure you're not a member of any kind of law enforcement before they're going to give up, the passphrase to you. So, works the same way, even in a fantasy game.
And my stuff, if you have, and kind of going back to the full plate mail, if you're in full plate mail, the game's already designed to give you a whole bunch of disadvantages on
Right.
stealth. Climbing is going to be a lot harder.
Right.
If you're wearing full plate mail and you're on a boat, that's almost a death sentence if you get pushed overboard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I liked in the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. Is you're in this hot jungle and there are rules that if you're wearing heavy armor, I mean, you're gonna
You're
die.
going to get heat exhaustion. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you.
it's a real thing.
They have
Yeah.
mechanics for heat exhaustion. So when you're playing Tomb of Annihilation, you cannot go around wearing heavy armor. So
And so kind of rolling into our next thing is
mm,
auto successes and auto fails are only for attacks.
right.
This is in most editions that I played it. Skills typically are not auto successes.
Right.
Even a critical success in Pathfinder does not dictate that you automatically succeed at something.
Oh, it's a little bit different in Pathfinder. Like, are you talking
It
about attack rolls or are you talking about skill checks?
skill checks. So you can critical succeed in skill checks and it
Hmm.
does additional things, but there's still I really like the way the crit system works in Pathfinder versus D&D, but that's an
Okay,
entirely different topic.
gotcha.
But even when you crit, it doesn't mean that you just automatically succeed.
Right.
Because we were talking about, well, I rolled a 20. Why would the king not give me his kingdom? Again, we're going to fall back into this common sense thing, right? Like a 20, maybe the king doesn't give you his kingdom,
Yep.
but now he laughs it off. He's like, "Oh, you're a jester. That's hilarious. I'm not going to throw you in jail for insulting me in front of my court." Right?
Yep. Right.
Like, good job rolling the 20. You didn't get everybody thrown in jail. So, yeah, the critical successes and critical fail, you could roll a 1 and still succeed
Yeah,
on a
depending
skill.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, if you're a rogue and you're opening a lock and you have a plus 12, and it's a really crappy door, you roll a 1, you pop the lock, the door swings open.
Yeah.
You broke your thief pick at the same time, but you unlock the door.
Yeah.
Like, you could have something bad happen and still succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fantastic example, and that's something that I've brought up on social media numerous times when I've had players complain, or when I've seen players complain that a nat 20 is not an auto success on a skill check. But keep in mind, the reverse of that is also true, that a nat one's not going to be an automatic fail on a skill check.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the automatic succeed. I'm just thinking about this. Like, if you wanted to do an acrobatics to jump a gap, like, yeah, the gap is 50 feet. Well, I rolled a 20 on my acrobatics. Like, it's still 50 feet. Like,
right.
you can't just
Um.
all of a sudden magically jump.
Yep. Yeah. Now I'm with you. Sorry, I was just checking a message from my wife real quick.
All good.
She was saying something that it looks like it says rerun on. Oh, I know why she's saying um because she's not on the stream yet. That's why. She's looking at our one of our past videos. Okay. All right. Just want to check and make sure everything was okay. So now, how do you feel about hidden roles to avoid metagaming, Jeremy? Like using the dice tower.
So I'm gonna go. I use it sometimes, but not all of the times. I really like it for stealth rolls and some
Yep.
stuff like that. Persuasion, diplomacy. There's all kinds of roles where I think it's really helpful, where only the DM sees it, so the players have no idea how well they did. It makes them role play as if they don't know the answer, which is typically how it should go. You don't know the answer,
Yep.
so I think it's really useful. I know we kind of differ on when and how much to use that, though.
We do a little bit. So I use it all the time in my games because I'm on Fantasy Grounds and I use Fantasy Grounds, and there is a dice tower on there. So the players can actually pick up the die and they can put it in the
Drop it
dice
in.
tower, and I'm the only one that sees the result. I do that for all the skill checks because the way I rationalize it is that attack rolls, for example, you're going to know if you hit or miss.
Whether you hit or not. Yeah.
Okay, it's instant. It's right there. With skill checks, excuse me, with skill checks, especially with stealth, and this is actually where I started doing this, was really with stealth.
Yeah.
Because when I thought about it several years ago when I got back into D&D and started running 5th edition games, it made sense to me that if you are hiding, the only way that you can tell if you actually succeeded on your attempt to hide or not is by the actions and reactions of the
Of the
NPCs
NPC.
and the people
100%.
around you. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I started doing was I started having my players at the players I had at that time putting stealth rolls in the dice tower. There was one who was playing a rogue; she wasn't really happy about it, but all the other players understood why I was doing it. It made perfect sense to them, and I told this player, I said, "I'm going to describe the actions of the NPC, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to decide by their actions if they've seen you or not." And I would describe it like they looked directly in her, they looked right at her in her direction. Now, it doesn't mean they saw her,
Yeah.
because I mean, I've had people look straight at me and not see me. I've looked straight at somebody and not seen them. So I said, you're going to have to decide just by these actions if you're going to come out of hiding or not, and this is how you're going to decide how well, or how if you're hidden or not. So I started doing that for all the skill checks, and the reason why I like doing that is because it allows me, for two reasons. It allows me to weave their action and the results easier into the narrative of the game.
A lot more role playing, a lot less metagaming.
Right. And see, what
Hmm.
you just said there is a second point. From metagaming, we all know my famous example. I've talked about it twice before, why I had a player make a history check and she got like a 24, 25. And I told her, you still don't recognize this symbol. Because
Yeah.
why? Your player's never seen it.
Yeah.
So
If you don't
that's
know, you don't know.
exactly. So that's another reason why I started doing that, because I got tired of this particular player argue with me every time
Yeah.
she
I
got.
got a 24. Yeah. This is
Oh yeah, or
nonsense.
every time she would
I
get a
don't
nat, no
care.
matter how many times I explained to her that a
Yeah.
nat 20 is not an auto success, and she knew the rule, but she just thought it was dumb, and she wanted me to override it.
Yeah. And so kind of me and Paul differ a little bit. I will
Yeah.
hide some of my roles, but I also, uh, we all know that there's sessions and stuff where there's no combat, where a lot of it's social encounters or a shopping day or a beach party day. You get those different episodes, right? And if there's no combat and everything's just skills, the players get almost like bored as they don't get to uh, basically roll dice. That they like
Right.
their clicky clackies, they want to throw them around. So in those episodes, I will tend to call for a lot more and show people.
Hmm.
In Foundry, I actually have the ability and I have macros set up for perception and stuff where I can click it and it rolls all the players' perceptions, and I'm the only one who sees that I even rolled. So if
Ah,
they're
okay.
walking around, I can click a button and go, hey, there's stealth enemies. Nobody said they're looking for it. So I know that nobody, and I'm looking at stuff, nobody noticed anything.
I
Uh,
like it. That's
so
so it actually will make the roll. It'll actually roll their ability, and they don't
mhm.
know that you rolled it. So
Yeah, and
you're not
it's a
relying on.
macro. So
Okay,
yeah, it's
see,
one button for the whole party, and I it just throws out everybody's perception.
that is sweet. So you're not relying on passive perception, basically.
I will sometimes. So it really depends on like if they're in a dungeon, uh, and like, hey, we're being cautious and stuff like that. I'm gonna roll their actual perceptions
Hmm.
versus they're walking down the street talking, and then a passive perception gets somebody. I think those are two very different things. So if I think that your person is actively searching, I'm going to give you your perception roll versus a passive, which is you naturally notice something.
That's how I look at passive perception as well. Is that passive perception to me means that you are, walking down the street, and you just happen to notice something out of the corner of your eye, or something got your attention. Um, Now, I think going down a noisy, busy street, it's going to be hard to hear something out of
Yeah,
overall that noise. But if they're going stealthy, like in a dungeon, and they're quiet
yeah.
while they're going down, okay, it's quiet. So if there's no noise going on, then I may use hearing.
I mean, if you're going down a street that you know is full of cup purses and stuff like that, and you're like, I want to put my hand over my purse to try to keep an eye on it, I'm not going to roll your passive. I'm probably going to roll your perception. Now, I'm probably going to give you a bonus because you're hanging on to it.
Yep.
That's no longer passive. You are actually trying to keep focus to make sure that you're not stolen from. So
Yep.
that's no longer passive to me.
I agree.
Uh,
I agree.
but yeah,
Uh,
I do like I like that for a lot of I have a few macros for a couple different things like that where I want the players to all roll something and just see if they know without them ever knowing that I rolled it for them.
Yeah, you must be better than I am though, because every time I stop to do something like that, my players can tell something's up because, I've either stopped listening to
Yeah.
them or I stopped talking, and I just haven't. I'm not very good at being able to do two things at once where I can make rolls like that and look at them while I'm still paying attention to what's going on to what my players are doing. That's one reason why I rely on passive perception, because I can just see it, their score, and know if it's
Yeah.
hits it
Now,
or not.
this has nothing to do with tonight's topic, but how much do your players enter role play?
I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, my group is still working on that too.
and the reason I say that is because at the end of every one of our sessions, well, I can't say at the end of every one of ours, but I've been forgetting to do it. But I remember to do it the last session. But I go around and ask them, "What is your character thinking and feeling right now about what's happened?" Okay, and they come up with some really cool stuff, and I'm just like, and I want to say to the players like, why aren't you talking to the other players about
Yeah.
this during downtime? That is the
Yeah.
time when you would say, like, we're playing Curse of Strahd, and one of my players said something like, and I know we're kind of getting off topic, and we'll get back to the topic here, but one of my players said, well, I'm feeling, really bad because, we want to help this town and we accidentally unleashed a horror on the town. A horror. Let me make sure I'm enunciating that word correctly. A
Yeah.
horror on the town. And, so the town basically got decimated. And he was telling me, he goes, my character feels horrible, that this happened. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that I want them to role play during
Yeah.
rest and downtime, but they don't do it. They're like, I'm like, okay, guys, you're taking a long rest. What do you guys want to do during a long rest? And they just kind of look at me and they're like, yeah, I guess we're resting, or I check my weapons, or I read my spell
Right.
book. And it's
Like,
like,
as the storyteller, we can do so much to build the tension in the story, but building the
right.
relationship amongst the party is really amongst the party. Like, you can't really force them to have better bonds unless they're talking together, forming those better bonds. Again, I know it's a little off topic, but it made me think about it.
Okay.
Back on topic.
Well, hang
Oh,
on a
go ahead.
second. Hang on a second before you go there, because you just said something there that is a topic for another stream, and I want to write it down.
There we go.
DMs build tension, players build relationships. I want to write this down before I forgot. That's awesome. Okay,
Loaded.
I'm good. Okay, I know I'd forget
Yeah.
that if I didn't write it down. So go ahead, get us back on topic, on
Yeah.
Jeremy.
So
Yeah.
next topic, we're gonna kind of drop back into lines and veils. We talked about it a lot our first episode.
Oh.
So just a quick overview of what a line and a veil is at session 0, most of your tables, you should be setting up these lines and veils. What a line is it is a very hard do not do this. Typically, it's going to be sexual abuse, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Body modifications of another player. Don't go over and modify somebody else's character. Uh, there's just all kinds. There's one that I've had where it's don't hurt children.
Yep.
Like, if you see children goblins, children, like, it doesn't matter if it's a kid and it's a humanoid. You're not supposed to hurt them. And that's a line. That means you don't do it. You don't get to do it because you want to. You don't do it. That is a line. There's a good way to get booted from a game. What a veil is it's something that we don't want to role play. Typically, this is going to be romance at a lot of tables. Like, I want to do it with the girl. Fantastic. Roll a dice. That's how well you did. I don't want to describe that scenario. I don't want to describe that scene. That's not really what my table's going to be about. So that is a veil for my table. A lot of GMs and storytellers will set those up to begin with and possibly add them throughout the game.
Now, one thing I want to say here, Jeremy, that was a great overview of the difference between lines and veils. This topic sounds like it's about for players, right? That know you can't do whatever you want in D&D. But it
Yep.
also, when it comes to the topic of lines and veils, it also applies to DMs and GMs as well. And here's why I say that. Because I know somebody, I'm not going to go into specifics, and it's something personal for them. I was talking with them the other day, and this person had something that happened to them from their past. The very mention of it, just the mention of the topic, brought tears to their eyes because they were right back there reliving it. Okay, just a mention of it. So when I say this is not about just about players, is also about, this applies to DMs too. If a player says, I don't want this topic in the game, DMs, you cannot do whatever you want to do just because it's your game. If you're going to have this
100%.
player in a game and they say, I don't want to see kids being hurt, I don't want to have any sexual topics, I don't want rape, I don't want any of this in the game, okay, don't do it. It applies to you as well, just like it applies to your players.
I've had a vet that he didn't want, like, torture scenes.
I can believe it.
And
Yeah.
it totally made sense. And yeah, as a DM, there's a point in time where it's like, oh, this would be a really like unique situation, but it's as you and the DM to find a different way to tell the story.
Yep, absolutely.
You
Agreed.
don't hint at it, you just don't do it. You find a better and a different way to tell the story.
Yep.
And it's a game that we're all trying to have fun at. Uh, it don't try to push people's triggers, and be sensitive. If you think somebody was really upset by something going on and the table hasn't talked about it after the game, I would probably reach out to them the day or two afterwards and say, hey, I noticed you were a little off-putted by what was going on. Did that upset you? We can totally cut that out from here on out. I totally understand. I won't tell the like and as the storyteller, GM, whatever, it's your job to have ambiguity. You don't want every like if you cut something out of the game, don't say, "Hey guys, this week because of last week, so and so really didn't like it, so we're gonna stop doing that in our games from now on." Because that really like actually shines a light onto the person. So
Yes.
you don't want to do that. Just as the GM, just say, "Hey guys, somebody brought it up to my attention, and we're just gonna not do this anymore. Just to respect everybody." That should be
Absolutely.
all it takes. If it takes more than that, uh, I would start. I mean, that's a massive red flag to me.
It's a huge red flag, and like I've told you before, when I'm reading social media and I see players and DMs talk about how, these people who have triggers for certain topics just need to grow up. That this is a game with adult topics. No, it's not. It's not a
Yeah,
game
that.
with
Oh,
adult
I hate
topics.
that one.
It
I hate
drives me
that one.
nuts.
Yeah, it's an adult game with adult topics. I play with a 5-year-old, so there's definitely no adult topics
Right.
in my D&D game because there doesn't need to be.
Absolutely, there
It's
doesn't need
just
to
not
be.
needed.
No,
Yeah,
and here's the thing. Here's one of the things I love about D&D is that, and I'm sure this applies to other tabletop role playing games. You can make this game whatever you want it to be. You can
100%.
make it as dark as you want it to be. You can make it as light as you want it to be. Now, like I said, I'm running Curse of Strahd right now, and I've got a 15-year-old in that game. I could
Yeah, it's a
make her.
meat grinder of a campaign.
I could make it dark if I wanted to. I mean, it's
Yeah,
gothic horror. Gothic horror is supposed to be dark.
yeah.
But out of respect for her, it's one of my other players' daughter. I don't go as dark in Curse of Strahd as I could. And honestly, I probably wouldn't go as dark in Curse of Strahd as some other people probably have. I love, and here's the thing, I don't like watching horror movies, but I like the idea of, I like gothic horror, you know,
Yeah.
werewolves,
That,
vampires, I mean, mummies, those are all cool.
that's the way my wife is. She likes the idea, but she doesn't want to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
I get it. I get it.
So, I mean, that's one of the things again that a quick side note again that I love about D&D. I remember when my wife and I first got married, and she was adamantly against D&D. And over time, I had to show her that you know I don't run dark games. My games are, I like pretty much heroic games outside of
Yeah.
Curse of Strahd. I like players being heroes. I want them to be heroes. I want them to want to do good.
One of my players is constantly asking for me to run an evil campaign, and I hate it so much. I don't enjoy running that kind of game.
No,
I don't.
not going to do it. Yeah, and I don't want to run an evil campaign either. I'm okay with some anti-heroes. I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
You know,
anti-heroes are very, very different. I accept that, but like
right?
a straight villain campaign, it's not fun for me. It's
No.
honestly stressful. Like that
Yeah.
that's honestly really stressful when if because I've done it a couple times in the past and I just like refuse to do it as I've grown older because it's just like
Yep.
it's stressful. I don't enjoy it.
Yep. Yeah, I've never run an evil campaign, and I'm pretty much sure that I would not enjoy it at all. So, I can say that one of the things that my daughter doesn't play in my games anymore. She got a little burned out on D&D, but I already know one trigger that would be for her, and that is seeing animals being hurt. And the reason I know that is because we went to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yesterday, and
Yeah.
we had to leave halfway through the movie because they show
The
animals.
rocket. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so I don't blame her. I don't
That's a
blame
pretty
her.
brutal scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame her at all. And so we got up and we left. And I was like, okay, I'll finish the movie on my own when it comes out
Yeah.
on streaming. So,
All right,
Um,
back into happier topics.
yes, let's get there because you and I on this one, we differed a lot on
Ye-
this one.
We do. We differ a ton on this.
So
So
go ahead.
I yeah, so we're kind of gonna go into spells, do exactly as they say is what Paul kind of feels like,
Yep.
and I get a little wishy-washy on that.
Okay. Give an example, Jeremy.
Yeah, so like something that I really like, and it's kind of to me in the nature of the game, if you're going to cast a fireball, some kind of fire spell, and you're in a dungeon that has torches with continue flame through them, right? If you're like, I want to try to pull the arcane energy out of these torches that have a spell on them, been like, to use it to supercharge your fire spell. Sure, roll an arcana. Let's see if you can do that. That's really cool. You rolled really high, and you suck some of the torches off of it, and the torches blink out as your fireball grows double in size as it goes down the tunnel. That seems really cool. Say you roll a one, you suck the torches in. It's a little too much power, and you end up, and all of a sudden the fireball detonates on top of you instead. Uh, there's obviously room where you didn't succeed, but you still cast your spell. I do think if you're going to do crazy things and ask me for stuff like that, there has to be if I roll really bad, something bad can happen because something really good can happen.
Yeah, I'm a lot different on that one. For that to happen, they would have to have some kind of device that would allow them to pull that
That'd be
energy
cool
out of
too.
torches, and overpower the fireball. Now, I think it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I love the idea that it's cool,
Yeah,
and that is actually really cool. And I'm picturing it in my head. I can so picture it in my
yeah,
head happening. But I tell you, maybe this comes from the fact, Jeremy, that I just been so burned by past players. Just
yeah,
trying. I mean, their shenanigans with spells. I mean, let's look
one hundred
at
percent.
let's look at create water. I'm going to create water in the person's lungs and drown them and kill them instantly. Number
Yeah,
one, lungs are not empty containers. I know everybody has this misconception that lungs are empty bags. They are not. Okay, so no, you cannot fill somebody's lungs, with water. Plus, I think you pointed out when we talked about this, create water requires line of sight.
so even if it didn't, anything that can one shot. So in a world full of clerics, right? You got to think about all the different denominations of clerics, right? A
Right.
lot of them have create water. All of a sudden, one cleric figures out if you create water inside of somebody, you can basically one shot them. The next time, if the players really wanted to debate me on this, I'd be fine with it. And the next combat would have a cleric that would one shot that cleric using that spell. And
Yep.
then if the player got upset, I've been like, you're the one who started this.
Right.
Just because you did it means everybody else can do it as well.
Yep.
And that's not fun. The players don't want to get one shotted by a first level spell with almost no counter to it.
And to that point, that is something every time a player has brought up to me if they can do something like that. The famous example we've talked about before. I want to sneak up on somebody and slit their throat from behind. I
Coup
always
de
tell
grace.
players, yeah, I always tell players, I'm fine with that. If you want to be able to do that, just remember the bad guys can do it too. They can do it to
Yep.
you. So if you're okay with a NPC, succeeding on a stealth check and sneaking up on you and one shotting you, or to going back to create water. If you're okay with an NPC creating water in your lungs and drowning you and one shotting you, okay, great, let's go for it. And
Yeah.
I love bringing it up to players because it's usually every time I bring this up to a player, they walk back and go, they backpedal. Okay, okay, all right, I
Oh,
don't want to do
100%.
that now. Yeah, they always
Yeah,
do.
100%.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times in most D&D games, in most TTRPGs, the players tend to be outnumbered more often than not, right? You
right,
get the boss combat where maybe it's one big monster versus your 4, 5, 8 players, but you're more likely to fight 15 orcs where if any of them could sneak up and the action economy is typically not in the party's favor to begin
right,
most combats.
right.
So you would never want one shot capabilities. Like as a ranger, I call shot that guy's throat. If I roll a 20, it kills him. No, that's not it. You go and fight goblins that all have poisoned bows, and there's 20 of them. What do you think they're all gonna do? I call shot that guy's throat. Oh, look, he died.
Right. Okay. Yeah. If you're okay with one of them with poison arrows, one shotting your ranger through
Yeah.
the throat. Okay. Sure. Let's go
Uh,
for it. What I've
now,
told my. Oh, go ahead. You
oh,
finish.
I was gonna say the caveat on my spell, the way I let them cool in arcane, using a chill touch, empowered by the skeleton remains. The caveat with that is you can have a cool idea, you can describe the cool idea you want me to tell you. I'm going to tell you to check. You can decide to do it or not, but if you don't, you cannot tell me a new cool idea. You're just do your normal actions. Because what happened when I first really started to push the players to do this, it was like, well, can I do this? Because I want to be able to do this. I don't really think that'd be a cool way. So this is what your check would be. All right, well then I'm gonna do this, and this instead. All right, well this would be your check. That's way too hard. I'll do this, and this instead. It's like no. Combat's gonna take 5 days if we do this.
Yep.
So you can do one cool thing. I'll tell you what the check is. You can say yes or no, or do your normal actions like you normally would.
It's not like everybody in combat's going to sit there and wait while you figure out what you're going to do. Hey, bad guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, this, and this. Can you guys just hang off a sec?
Yeah.
For a sec.
It breaks the immersion. Now, I will say my players are really good where if they tell me an idea that they want to do, regardless of the DC, they will almost always attempt it because they've already stated that was what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to enforce that because sometimes they try really crazy things in the DC. I'm like, guys, the DC for that's 20, and they're like, okay, I don't want to do that but sometimes they do just because they're like, that's what my character would do. So I'm gonna stick to my guns and attempt it anyways. And then if they succeed, I'm not gonna lie. When I set a DC that's 18, 20, 25, and on a cool maneuver like that, and they succeed, I mean, those are memories right there.
That is true. That is true. And, I think you bring up a interesting point there because I was about to say, well, why do you tell them the DC? Why not just have it in your head? Because most of the time that's what I do. But here's the thing. Without telling them the DC, then it doesn't become a cool memory.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's because they're attempting something cool that is outside of the game rules, they don't know. Right? Mm-hmm. Like if they're fighting an orc wearing half plate mail, they've been like, all right, I don't know exactly what it's going to take for me to hit him, but I have a rough idea. If I'm going to cast a fireball, I know what my DC is. I know roughly how many of them may be able to get out of it. You have a rough idea, but if you're coming up with these cool ideas, you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think it's on the GM to be transparent and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, how difficult this is going to be. Because what you're asking is really challenging, but let's see if we could do it. That does give them the chance to back out if it is too hard. And I think that's really important when you're allowing stuff like that.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, Jeremy, I think we both knew this was going to be one of our shorter streams because it is Mother's Day. And
exactly.
So
happy Mother's Day to any of those in the chat too, Cheryl.
Yeah, Cheryl. Happy Mother's Day. Hope it was a good one for you. I don't know if anybody else is out there. I'm not looking at the analytics right now. So, Jeremy, can you see how many people we have on?
We got 5 people right now, and I'm not for sure how many of them are mothers. But happy Mother's Day, nonetheless.
Awesome. All right. Well, what's going to be the next topic, Jeremy? I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, so the next one is going to be, let me double check. I believe it is going to be the 28th. And so we're going to be talking about how to make combat not suck without pissing off your players. It's a fine balance, and we have some ideas on it. As always, if you guys ever have ideas or a topic you'd like for us to talk about, you can always hit us up on the Twitch stream as well as any of our Twitter handles, and we'll get that into a list of talking about. Also, my Kickstarter is live. We hit our goal in 80 minutes, so that was a really cool thing from the last from last stream to this stream.
Where are you guys at now? I mean, can you tell us the because last I saw it a few days ago, you were like $16,000.
Yeah, so we're about 16 and a half right now. It as you get closer towards the end of it, it starts to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I
But
gotcha. Okay.
uh yeah, we're 12 days into it, 18 days left, and yeah, we blew past our goal and are just hitting stretch goal after stretch goal.
That's awesome. I still need to pledge, but I will before it's over with.
Hey,
So,
hey, no worries.
yeah. So, all right. Well, Jeremy, as always, it was fun getting to talk about our favorite hobby with you.
As always.
All right. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And we will see you guys next time. Jeremy, take care.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.